Marcus Reed was 34 years old, a devoted single father whose entire world revolved around his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Every weekday began long before the sun rose. At 5 o'clock each morning, his small apartment filled with the gentle sounds of breakfast cooking. Marcus carefully packed Lily's school lunch, braided her long brown hair the best he could, and helped her finish homework that had been left incomplete the night before. Life had never been easy after losing his wife several years earlier, but he refused to let grief define their future. Instead, he built a simple life around discipline, honesty, and love. Every smile he gave his daughter reminded him why he kept moving forward despite the endless challenges. After walking Lily to the neighborhood school bus stop, Marcus hurried to the local supermarket where he had worked as a cashier for nearly 8 years. The job did not pay much, but it offered steady hours and enough income to keep a roof over their heads. Customers appreciated his patience and kindness. Even during the busiest shopping hours, Marcus greeted every person warmly, asked about their day, and helped elderly shoppers carry heavy bags whenever his supervisor allowed. Many regular customers deliberately chose his checkout lane because they trusted him and enjoyed his cheerful attitude. His co-workers often wondered how Marcus managed to stay positive. They knew he worked overtime whenever possible and sometimes skipped lunch to save money. Yet he never complained. Whenever someone needed to swap shifts or required help, Marcus volunteered without expecting anything in return. He believed that kindness always returned in unexpected ways, even if it took years. That particular Tuesday began like any other, except the weather forecast warned of heavy rain throughout the afternoon. By noon, dark clouds covered the sky, and powerful winds pushed sheets of rain against the supermarket windows. Customers flooded into the store after work, hoping to buy groceries before the storm became worse. Shopping carts filled every aisle, checkout lines stretched across the front entrance, and employees hurried from one task to another. Marcus remained calm behind register 4. He scanned groceries efficiently while chatting with customers. He joked with young children, wished elderly shoppers a safe trip home, and patiently helped a confused tourist understand the payment machine. Although the store was extremely busy, he refused to rush people who needed extra assistance. Around 4 in the afternoon, the automatic doors slid open once again. An elderly woman entered carrying only a small shopping basket. She wore a simple gray coat, comfortable walking shoes, and an old knitted scarf. Nothing about her appearance suggested wealth or importance. Her silver hair was neatly tied back, and she smiled politely at employees as she slowly walked through the produce section selecting fruit, bread, soup, and a few household essentials. Most customers barely noticed her. Marcus glanced toward the entrance while scanning another customer's groceries. He saw the elderly woman pause for a moment as if she had become dizzy. She steadied herself by placing one hand against a shelf before continuing toward the checkout area. Marcus frowned slightly, sensing that something was wrong, but the long line of waiting customers demanded his attention. Only seconds later, a loud crash echoed through the front of the store. The elderly woman's shopping basket slipped from her hands. Apples rolled across the polished floor as she collapsed heavily near the entrance. Several nearby shoppers gasped. One woman screamed for help while others simply stood frozen in shock. A few customers reached for their phones, uncertain whether to record the incident or call emergency services. Marcus did not hesitate. Ignoring the growing checkout line, he stepped away from his register and hurried across the store. Years earlier he had completed a workplace first aid course, and the training immediately returned to him. Kneeling beside the woman, he gently supported her head and checked whether she was breathing normally. She was conscious but weak, struggling to speak. "It's okay," Marcus said calmly. "Help is on the way. Just keep breathing." He asked another employee to call emergency services immediately while requesting someone else to bring the store's first aid kit. A customer offered a folded jacket, but Marcus removed his own uniform jacket instead and carefully placed it beneath the woman's shoulders to keep her warm against the cold floor. The elderly woman slowly opened her eyes and looked at Marcus with gratitude. Her breathing remained shallow, but his reassuring voice helped calm her fear. He continued speaking gently, encouraging her to stay awake until the paramedics arrived. Within minutes, the sound of ambulance sirens could be heard outside. Paramedics entered the supermarket carrying medical equipment and quickly assessed the situation. One of them quietly thanked Marcus for responding so quickly, explaining that his immediate assistance had likely prevented the woman's condition from becoming much worse. As the medical team carefully lifted her onto a stretcher, the elderly woman reached for Marcus's hand. Her fingers trembled as she squeezed it gently. "Thank you," she whispered with tears in her eyes. "You didn't walk away." Marcus smiled warmly. "I'm just glad you're going to be okay." The ambulance doors closed, and the vehicle disappeared into the pouring rain. Marcus watched silently for a moment before returning to the supermarket. He apologized to the waiting customers for the delay, though many of them thanked him instead. Several shoppers quietly applauded, while others nodded with respect. Marcus resumed scanning groceries as though nothing extraordinary had happened. He believed anyone should help another person in need. He never asked the woman's name, never expected recognition, and certainly never imagined that she was Eleanor Whitmore, the beloved mother of billionaire businessman Daniel Whitmore. As the evening continued and the rain finally began to ease, Marcus finished his shift believing the incident was over. He had absolutely no idea that his simple decision to choose compassion over convenience had already set in motion events that would soon change his life forever. Marcus Reed arrived at the supermarket earlier than usual the following morning. Although he had slept only a few hours, he wanted to make up for the delay at his checkout lane the previous day. He believed his manager would understand why he had stepped away from the register to help an elderly customer during a medical emergency. Several co-workers greeted him warmly, and a few quietly praised him for staying calm when everyone else had panicked. One cashier even remarked that the paramedics had said Marcus's quick actions may have prevented a far more serious outcome. Marcus simply smiled and replied that anyone would have done the same. Deep down, he never expected praise or a reward. Helping someone in danger had felt like the only choice. Barely 20 minutes into his shift, the assistant manager approached him with a serious expression. "Marcus, the store manager wants to see you in his office." Marcus nodded politely and followed him through the back hallway. As he entered the office, he immediately sensed the atmosphere was different. The store manager sat behind his desk with several printed reports spread in front of him. A regional supervisor was also present, silently reviewing documents without making eye contact. The manager folded his hands and spoke in a cold, formal voice. "Marcus, we've reviewed yesterday's incident." Marcus expected questions about the elderly woman or perhaps a discussion about emergency procedures. Instead, the manager slid a report across the desk. "You abandoned your assigned register during peak business hours without authorization." Marcus looked at the paper in disbelief. "Sir, the customer collapsed. She needed immediate help. Someone had already called for an ambulance, but there wasn't anyone beside her." The manager interrupted him. "That isn't the issue. Company policy requires employees to remain at their assigned stations unless instructed otherwise by management." Marcus remained calm. "With respect, if I had waited for permission, valuable time could have been lost. She was lying on the floor. I only wanted to help until the paramedics arrived." The regional supervisor finally spoke. "As a result of your absence, checkout lines became longer. We received multiple customer complaints. Several shoppers reportedly left without making purchases." Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. "So I'm being questioned because I helped save someone's life?" The manager sighed. "This isn't personal. Policies exist for a reason." Marcus looked from one face to another, hoping someone would acknowledge the obvious. Neither man showed the slightest sympathy. After several moments of silence, the manager opened a folder and removed a single sheet of paper. Effective immediately, your employment with this company is terminated for violating operational procedures. Marcus stared at the termination notice. 8 years of loyal service had ended in less than 10 minutes. He slowly accepted the envelope without raising his voice. I've worked here almost every holiday. I've covered shifts whenever people called in sick. I've never received a disciplinary warning. The manager avoided eye contact. This decision is final. Marcus took a deep breath. I would make the same decision again. Neither executive responded. Marcus quietly stood, thanked them for the opportunities he had been given over the years, and walked out of the office carrying the small envelope that suddenly represented the loss of his family's only steady income. His co-workers immediately realized something was wrong. Several gathered around him as he emptied his locker into a small cardboard box containing family photographs, a coffee mug Lily had painted at school, and an old name badge worn smooth after years of use. One employee whispered, "They're really firing you?" Marcus nodded. "It's okay. I'll figure something out." Another coworker shook her head. "You saved that woman's life." Marcus smiled sadly. "I'd still do it again." As he walked through the front doors for the final time, many regular customers recognized him and waved, unaware they would never see him behind register 4 again. Outside, gray clouds still covered the sky. Marcus sat quietly on a nearby bench before beginning the long walk home. Every step felt heavier than the last. His thoughts weren't about himself. They were about Lily. Rent was due within 2 weeks. School supplies would soon need replacing. Their refrigerator was already nearly empty. That evening, Lily ran to the door with her usual excitement. "Dad, you're home early." Marcus forced a smile. "I am." She immediately noticed the cardboard box in his hands. "What happened?" Marcus sat beside her at the small kitchen table and gently explained everything. He told her about the elderly woman collapsing, how he had helped until the ambulance arrived, and how the company had decided to fire him. Lily listened quietly before wrapping her arms around him. "You always tell me that helping people is the right thing." Marcus nodded. "It is." "Then you didn't do anything wrong." Her simple words carried more comfort than anything an adult could have said. That same evening, several miles away in one of the city's finest private hospitals, Eleanor repeatedly asked the nurses about the young cashier who had stayed beside her. After making several phone calls, she finally learned something that left her stunned. The man who had saved her life had lost his job because he chose compassion over company policy. Tears filled her eyes. She immediately reached for her phone and called her son, Daniel Whitmore, one of the country's most respected billionaire entrepreneurs. "Daniel," she said firmly, "find the young man named Marcus Reed." "What happened, Mother?" "He saved my life." Daniel smiled with relief. "I'm grateful." Eleanor's voice became stronger. "And yesterday they fired him for doing it." Silence filled the line. Daniel slowly stood from his office chair. "They fired the man who saved your life?" "Yes." Daniel's expression hardened. "Don't worry,